sides in this. Let's talk to Lincoln Mitchell in New York, advisor at the Human Rights Institute and Columbia University. Let me ask you first of all about what you think is going to happen. If the people of Crimea vote on Sunday to go with Russia, and Russia says that's their choice, what do you think will happen then?
Well, first, I think that is exactly what's going to happen. It's pretty clear what the outcome of this referendum will be. The most significant thing that will mean is that it will mean a hardening of Russia's position. Getting Russia to walk back anything they've said or done over the last week, 2 weeks, or month becomes much harder once they can point to, and they will point to, what we heard Foreign Minister Lavrov saying, the will of the Crimean people, which is a little bit not exactly what's going on here, but it makes it easier for them to fall back on that. It makes further negotiations more difficult. So this is not going to be a good development on Sunday. Okay,
you're taking it as a given that the people of Crimea are going to say, yes, we want to be part of Russia. What do you think Russia will do then?
Well, let me just be a little clear. I'm taking it as a given that it's going to be reported out that that's what the people of Crimea are going to say. At that point, Russia is going to begin in one form or another, as they've already begun to do, to incorporate Crimea into Russia. They've changed some of the currencies at the banks. They'll start incorporating them in other ways, and that will make it, and then instead of having a disputed region, we have a region that is part of Russia, and that makes it much more difficult to change that. This is not radically dissimilar to what Russia did following its invasion of Georgia in 2008. It was a little different because there what it did was it very quickly pushed through statements by the kind of de facto legislatures in Abkhazia and South Ossetia asserting independence. And then Russia quickly recognized that, thus changing how they could present the reality to the rest of the world. And that's been a real problem for Georgia since then.
Yeah, Lincoln, this is, in your words, an invasion. It already is, as far as you're concerned. Now, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. It is an associate member of NATO. And the treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty, says that if any one member is threatened, then the others are duty-bound to go to its protection. Do you think there is any possibility of military aid from the West to Ukraine if the Russian troops stay there and the territory is in effect annexed?
Well, and I would also add, if Russian troops continue further into other parts of Ukraine, which is not off the table at all right now. And I think where you're not going to see, NATO troops and Russian troops going head-to-head, you will very possibly see more movements of battleships in the Black Sea, NATO and American battleships in the Black Sea, more redeploying air resources closer to the eastern border of NATO. So this is going to be a very delicate dance. I think it's extremely unlikely it goes into a shooting war, but you're not going to see, I would be surprised if the Western militaries and NATO did nothing.
Why push ahead with sanctions when Russia has made it perfectly plain, and so many analysts have said the same thing, that these sanctions will mean absolutely nothing to Russia? It's self-sufficient in its energy needs, and large parts of the West actually need Russia more than Russia needs the West.
Well, Russia is self-sufficient in its energy needs, but it needs Western money and it likes Western products. So if you can get full involvement by, for example, Germany and other European economies, that will impact Russia. It may not do it tomorrow or the next day, but it will begin to gradually have an impact. The fact that the foreign minister comes out and says sanctions won't have an impact, I interpret that as him saying we don't want sanctions. So I think this will help the Western negotiating position, but the vote in Crimea will hurt the Western negotiating position.
A final thought,
maybe a draw.
Because we only have a limited amount of time, Lincoln. Angela
Yes.
Merkel today, she went from saying, look, this isn't going to be very good, to saying there will be specific measures. Now, she's pretty friendly with Putin. He sees her as an extremely strong, influential Western leader. Now that she has said something like that, do you think that may influence the way Russia reacts?
I think it should influence the way Russia reacts. Russia has counted on keeping the West divided and having kind of the hawks on the American side of the Atlantic Ocean saying one thing, but that not translating into policy. If this translates into a unified Western policy, this changes Putin's reality. Whether or not he wants to recognize that, whether or not wants to recognize that, Russia wants to recognize that, that's not something we can control, but it does change it for them.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Lincoln Mitchell talking to us particularly about what Sergei Lavrov had to say in that press conference a short while ago. We thank you very much for your insight.